Ready.
All right. 3, 2, 1. Here we go. Justin Pelayo of Americom. Thanks so much for joining me tonight.
You're welcome.
We've been trying to do this for a long time, and I appreciate you sitting down. Very big, very honorable, very magnanimous, all the great words of you to sit down and we'll just talk a little bit about business and government contracting and all that great stuff. Maybe a little life thrown in the middle.
There you go. That sounds
All
good.
right. Well, I'll start out and I'll just say Justin and I met how many years ago now? 2001, 2, somewhere in that range?
It was.
Okay.
2 or 03.
Okay. So we'll call it 02, 03. I was sent down to Cannon Air Force Base to really do a butt chewing. There was some wiring that wasn't done correctly, and we sat down and drove over some things. And you and I were in the truck alone. You pulled over to the side, and I didn't know if you were going to kill me or offer me a bribe or what was going on. But you stopped and you said, "Doyle, here's the deal. I won 3 projects all at once. I only had enough management to cover 2 of them. I chose this one not to cover. I know it's not up to par. You give me a week and a half, it will be." I came back in 2 weeks and it was perfect.
Thank you.
So that told me all I needed to know, besides the kind of guys you hired that were buying crossbows and bidding on granny panties, but that's another story for another show.
And the location itself.
Clovis, New Mexico is the garden spot of New Mexico, that's for sure. And that's how we met. And then over the years, we just worked together. I think we enjoyed each other's company and got to be friends. And I learned a little bit about your story, and I've seen it going through because we've been in the same industry. Knowing that you started out in a pickup truck by yourself with your wife sitting tending to your child in the truck, sweating probably, because you were probably too cheap to let her run the air conditioning.
Naturally.
And turning it into the behemoth that it was for a period of time. And we're here today to talk about that process, how you got there, things you might do a little differently, how things went, and where we sit today. Is that okay?
That's fine. That's perfect. And I'll go back to how we met. When we met, it was that. I wasn't sure what to expect. I knew you were coming. Things weren't right. You started chewing, but it turned into a mutual respect.
Absolutely.
I needed the shove. You gave the shove. I fixed it. You came back. You gave the credence, and we turned into a great project for both of us. Both companies did well. I followed up with many more projects out there, and into a 5-year contract. So it was really really good thing. And then during that time, you and I did become friends out of respect, and I would say that, and to this day, it's that.
And I appreciate that. Let's back up. Clovis, New Mexico, for the folks that don't know, is Cannon Air Force Base.
Cannon Air Force Base.
And you and I worked in the government industry of doing projects for the government. We worked for big general contractors like Harris IT, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin. You name them, we worked for them. We also worked directly for the Air Force Base at times doing projects, mostly communications, mostly pulling cable, fiber, copper, doing some switches, some wireless stuff. We worked all over. I would say if there's anything technical on the communication side that we haven't touched, I'd like to know what it is.
I would agree.
All right. So you and I was on the project management side working for a prime contractor. You were our subcontractor, and I couldn't be more pleased with your work. We went to bat together and went and fought Air Force Command over some of their fiber closets they had at that base. But again, just backing up to give everybody a little bit of a background on how we got to know each other, what industry we worked in, and where Clovis, New Mexico actually is, and what it is it's an Air Force base. So having said that, let's back up a little bit. How did you get started in the industry?
After I got out of the Navy, I took my GI Bill and I went as a business major in Charleston. I was stationed in Charleston, South Carolina, I got out of the Navy. I went to school, and I took a telecommunications course as an elective, and I loved it. So I'm halfway through my business degree, and I jumped majors, and I got into networking. At the time, I became, after that, a Novell engineer. Novell was the networking software program of the day.
Right.
The Pentium had just come out. When I started, we were doing 286, 386, 46s.
Yeah.
And I was building those. My time in the Navy, I was a cannon cocker. I was a gunner's mate. So the electronics background that I had proved well for the networking side. But I wanted to be well-rounded. So I'm in the shop at our office there in Charleston, and our manager came in and says, I need a volunteer to pull some cable. I raised my hand. Now, this is Cat 4 was out. Cat 5 had just hit the market.
Okay.
So there was really, Cat 3 was everywhere in this category cable.
Right.
So I raised my hand. I started learning everything. Next thing I know, I'm the cable puller for that company. Then I left Carolina Business Systems, CBS, and I went to work for Stanley Associates. Now, because I had performed a lot of projects in Charleston for banks and some different law firms, I was getting calls to come do some more. So while I was doing my 8 to 5 for another company, I started Americom. I would go do my 8 to 5 and then go pull cable for Americom from 5 to midnight.
Okay.
Now, the funny thing, when we incorporated, when we signed the documents, my son was born on 9/11, 1997.
Okay.
We were incorporated in 9/12. So on the 12th, I bring in to my wife, who's in bed at the hospital. I said, I got some documents for you to sign, babe. What are these? We just started a company.
Oh, boy.
So I had to sneak that under sneak that in when I could.
Still medicated. Maybe.
Still medicated.
Okay.
She signed. Yeah, it was all good.
Good thinking.
So I continued doing that for several years, well, maybe 2 years, working for another company and then doing Americom on the side. A buddy of mine had gotten out of the Air Force and went to work for General Dynamics as a sub. And he calls me up one day, and we had just bought a house in Charleston. Noah, our firstborn, as I mentioned, was just around. Grandma Gladys, my wife's grandma, was out visiting us. And my buddy calls, and he says, why don't you come live on the road with us? We'll eat beans and splice fiber. And I said, Mike, that sounds great, but, all these things are happening for me, and I just don't think I can talk Tracy into it.
And I said, Mike, that sounds great.
So I hung up. I go
All
in
these
there
things
to
are
the
happening
kitchen,
for
and I
me.
said, let me tell you the conversation I just had. And she looked at me and says, well, why can't I live on the road with you? And I said, well, why not? And I turned to Grandma Gladys, who is a huge force in our lives then and even today, because she did have her own business and was a business woman in the 50s and 60s and 70s. Very strong, very forthcoming. And I looked at her and I said, I think I can do this, Grandma. I feel confident in my abilities. And she said, you're crazy as hell. Let's do it.
Oh, we like her.
We do.
We like her a lot.
We do. So she happened to be there when we kicked this around. And when she said that, we literally went with her. The next day, we went and shopped for travel trailers. We ended up buying one. I took my wife's favorite car ever that I ever bought for her, traded it for our first diesel pickup to pull that travel trailer, and we left. We left Charleston, and our first job was in Camp Pendleton, California. So we literally crossed the country.
Wow.
To start.
Was this a fifth wheel trailer or just
No.
a tow behind trailer?
Tow behind, bumper pull. It was terrible. I didn't have sway bars. It was long. I was in a short bed pickup. It beat me up. It was a white knuckle trip all the way across the country. We get to Camp Pendleton, and we're staying in Lake Elsinore at the RV park. We stayed in that trailer exactly 3 days, and my wife couldn't handle that. We moved from a house to a camp trailer with
3 days.
One slide, and it was quite by accident. The couple that I'd mentioned, Mike, they were there seeing us at the time, getting everything started. They were going to go out and spend the Saturday evening just looking at trailers, just because there was nothing else to do. It wasn't that nobody was interested in buying one. We were just going to go look and kick tires, that kind of thing.
Okay.
We ended up buying one.
Of course you did.
Quite by
And
accident.
that really made life much easier
The
because it was a big,
couple
at the
that
time, this was
might-
in
that mentioned
1998.
my,
At the
they were
end,
there seeing us at the
we
time.
bought a 99
visiting.
trailer.
Woo.
Yeah, it was a triple slide, 40-footer. It was great. It really was. It changed our lives, and it was made it comfortable to live on the road. So, and then we did. We lived in that trailer for about 5 years. Noah grew up in the trailer. Audrey, we were on the road, born, lived in us in that trailer.
So was this always like Elsinore, or
No.
was it moving around?
We were moving all around. So we left Elsinore. We went to Salt Lake City. I think that was our next gig. We pulled the fiber up there. The Olympics were coming, so we pulled fiber to all the traffic signals.
Okay.
Now, when I saw the SAL, this was hilarious. This is how green it was. They sent me the SAL, the statement of work, and I'm reading through it, and it says ATMS.
Okay.
I'm like, okay, ATMs. So I'm looking. Well, we're going to drop an ATM here and one there. I'm like, well, they're just kind of scattered around, but okay, there's going to be a lot of people. It's the Olympics. So we go for a drive. When we first get there, and the General Dynamics guys was showing us around, and we're way out in an industrial side and of Salt Lake City. I'm like, I don't think there's going to be much out here, but okay. And then he starts talking at the traffic signals, automatic traffic signals, ATMS. So I'm like, all right, I get it.
I'm learning. Keep my mouth shut. Somebody will eventually tell me what it is.
Where I got to go, what I got to do. I just splice fiber, man. I don't know where it goes.
So at this time, were you only a subcontractor? Had you won any direct awards at all?
So far, I'm still a subcontractor, a sub to MJ Communications, which was a sub to General Dynamics. So what really put us over the edge is we won a project in Wyoming, in Cheyenne, at F.E. Warren Air Force Base. And it was there where Tracy was pregnant. She was my splicer. We hired our first employees to come around to help me prep the cable. So what I would do is go get the charts, the prints, and then take the guys out front, and they would bring the cable into the rack, prep it, put it in its FODP. Then Tracy would come in and splice it, clean it all up, label it, put it back in the rack, and they move on. So it was all I could do to keep those guys moving. She was so fast and so good. General Dynamics had their own crew there, and they couldn't keep up. In fact, they were getting in our way. So the General Dynamics PM ran off his own crew, and we got the rest of it.
Nice.
So that worked
Well,
out well.
that's a classic General Dynamic move in that they had somebody young, hungry, and cheap,
Yes.
and did good work. And anytime we know a prime contractor can slice off a few percentage points on their margin,
Absolutely.
they're going to do it. So
Absolutely.
you're making your hay. You're doing a good job, getting a great reputation, and building up experience.
Name recognition started to come around. And then as things happen with partners and stuff, our relationship with MJ ended. We were doing a long-haul project with the fiber for level 3. We spliced and installed the fiber from El Paso to Phoenix.
Because it was a big, at the
using
time, this was in
the UP
1998.
Pacific
At the
right away.
end, we were
And that was a great project, but it ended and we split ways. So I was out of work. Americom didn't have any business for about, I would say 6 to 8 months, probably 8. And I was going stir crazy, going out of my mind. And that project manager that we met in Cheyenne at F.E. Warren, General Dynamics had moved him to China Lake. He called me out of the blue one day and says, hey, we have this little project. Wonder if you're interested. Need you to come test some existing fiber and give us a report. I'm like, that's great. I'm in. Now, Grandma Gladys, we were in Deming. We were at her house. I told Grandma, hey, I just got another project. Things are looking good. She says, that's awesome. Take Trevor with you.
So for the purpose of this podcast, Trevor and I talked on another podcast, and Trevor is your brother-in-law.
Trevor's my brother-in-law. And while we didn't have a strong relationship up to that point, because, he was just a little kid, through all this time. He really wasn't. But that, kind of perceived. We got to China Lake, and we both learned a lot together. This was my first major project that I won outside of anybody else. I was the second-tier sub to General Dynamics. When we got out there, not only did I continue that project or that contract, I won 2 more on the same base for 2 other prime contractors. Now, this was when NMCI was just kicking off, so that was a huge, huge Navy contract.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but China Lake back then especially was a pretty remote location.
Well, very remote. Still is.
So my point to that is some of my fondest memories and what I learned the most was on some of my early projects that were very remote.
Yeah.
You had nothing else to do.
Nothing.
So you learned and you worked and you worked. You didn't mind working an extra 4 hours to get it done so you could have some free time to go drive that extra day to actually get to a Walmart.
And this is why we met in Clovis.
Yes.
At Cannon.
There you go.
Just as remote.
There, exactly.
Only it smells more like cow shit in Clovis than it does in Ridgecrest.
That's a true statement.
But that started our path. We picked up. I say picked up. We hired 3 more technicians. So we had a total of 5.
So 5 techs at this point. You've been in business 2 years?
2 years. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And this was big time deal for us. We were going to make $500,000 on a project like this. Now, that's what the value's worth. Now you got to understand. I say I'm going to make. That's not what I keep.
It's a $500,000 contract. So you take all your costs out of that, your hard costs, your living expenses,
payroll.
You probably had to tool up all the guys.
Well, I'm tooling up everybody.
So you're buying tools, your food, because you're out remote. Nobody lives there full time. So you're hiring techs that live somewhere else. So you got to pay them wages to live there.
Well, and that was the unique thing. So there was 3 of us that came from Las Cruces.
Okay.
Or New Mexico, let's say that, and we all lived in my 5th wheel. So Tracy and the kids were back here in Las Cruces. So I drug the 5th wheel out there, and that's where us that came from out of state to work at China Lake, we lived, and then we hired local. So there was 3 guys living in my 5th wheel, and our RV park was 10 miles out of town.
They sent me the South State,
which was kind of nice. At first, I'm like, I don't want to live this far out. And then it was nice, the separation.
Okay.
So once you kind of settle in, absolutely, get a routine going. I would agree.
Roger Bell was the project manager and turned out to be a great friend also. Eva, his wife, would babysit the kids when we first met them. And even in Ridgecrest, the kids would come and want to go see Eva and Roger. So that was really something special. We got started out there. It was only supposed to be a 30-day project, testing fiber. It turned into 3 years. And again, it turned into hired by 2 other primes to do more work there at China Lake on the same contract, but through different primes. And during that time, right at the end, we were still there for another year. I came back here to Las Cruces, and we opened our first office, permanent. Noah was 5, ready to start school.
Okay.
So we wanted to settle down. We bought a house here and opened up a little... out of our office in our house, we were there for maybe a couple months. I decided we needed a storefront, so we got a storefront, and that worked out well. And then we won a big project out at White Sands.
So at this point, you're doing 100% government type work.
100%.
No commercial.
No commercial. No commercial at all. And it was I was first introduced to these set-aside programs. I really wasn't sure what they were, and I really had no inkling or no want to get involved. My thought was, I think you should hire me because of the quality of work that I do, not because of anything else. That's it. I want you to hire me for that.
And at this point, all sub work.
All sub
meaning
work.
you're working for other contractors that have the direct award from the government.
Right. Right, China Lake, and we're
still at China Lake, and we're talking. We're a little bit about. All your work has been primarily working for prime contractors, who are the contractor that actually has the direct award with the government. You're marketing yourself at this point.
Marketing yourself, and again, I was thinking, well, I really want to be hired for the quality of my work, not for anything else.
And why can't someone hire you directly if you're doing good work, right?
So I tried a few avenues, and
I mean that's the thought in government I'm doing a good job. Why won't somebody hire me? And then you start learning about set-asides.
I do start learning about all of them. The 8A, which is minority.
What's a set-aside?
The government has these rules and protocols that they adhere to in order to promote small business.
Right.
And then they take it a little bit further where they want to promote minority. And not just in races, but also...
Well, to back up just a little bit,
Sure.
so they set aside work
Yes.
for small
Only-
businesses.
Only for small business.
To give them a leg up, to help them compete against the bigger boys that
Exactly.
have the deep pockets to just buy every project if they let them,
And they could buy all the projects, buy all the competitors up,
especially the small ones.
especially the small ones, and it gives the entrepreneurs a good opportunity to get in and show their stuff.
Right.
And then that it's always been the genesis behind I think America is our ability to adapt and make things happen through need, through pure entrepreneurial wisdom.
So in my experiences, those set-asides are minority-owned businesses, women-owned businesses,
Right.
What they're calling disadvantaged businesses.
Disadvantaged. Yes.
So you go through a process with the Small Business Association, with the government, to get qualified as one of these set-asides. And is that where you're at this point? You learn about set-asides and you go, wait a minute, I think I qualify for this.
Well, what it was is I finally had to, as I learned more about it, and I was talking to other individuals saying, hey, why don't you go for this? I realized that and what it was for me was a turning point. The light came on. It says, look, Justin, I didn't make the rules. I can play within them, maybe. So I sought out a consultant to help me get my 8A. Now, the 8A is primarily set up for, and is only set up for minorities of all kinds. It doesn't matter.
Correct.
My particular minority group that I'm associated with or belong through with my dad's side is Asian Pacific, specifically Filipino. My granddad's Filipino. My granddad's survivor of Bataan Death March.
Wow.
That's where I qualified based on the government rules. I sent in all the documents, filled the documents out. It was a year-long process to get everything right.
And it's based on a lot of things: financial need, the whole ball of wax.
Oh, it is. It really is.
It's a fine-tooth comb. It's not just handed out. Here, you can have this set-aside advantage because we like you.
No.
It's really gone through.
And then they change the rules. They constantly change the rules. So
Correct.
when I went through, I got mine. And then once you finally get through it and you have a stack of paperwork and you have your 8A and you just sit back and wait for the calls to come in and the money to just start.
Right.
Yeah, no, you still have to market yourself. You still have to be out there. You still have to prove that you can do what you say you can do. And that was, we really wasted 4 years of our 8-year 8A. So the 8A is only an 8-year program. It is very rigid if you follow the rules exactly. They only allow so many projects per year as you build up to the halfway point, and at the halfway point, they want you to start stepping down.
Kind of weaning yourself off the program.
Off of the program.
So they give you a timeline.
Yes.
And there's a money amount as well, right? It's not
Yes.
an unlimited program to
No.
just print money for the rest of your life.
Correct.
What it is give you advantage for a certain amount of the time or a certain dollar amount.
Right.
And they figure by that time, that dollar amount and that number of years, you will graduate and you no longer need that advantage.
That's right. And that's the whole goal behind it. And there's a lot of pros and cons, I think, with the whole program.
Sure.
A lot of it is education. And it's also a lot of the person who got the 8A's willingness to go out and seek out the help.
And in my experience, the intent of the program is very, very sound.
It is.
Are there some folks that take advantage of it?
Oh, there are.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But having said that, folks like yourself and others who really are out to do a good job and need that leg up to compete against the deep pockets of the larger contractors, it's the perfect program.
It is a perfect program. Then it also opens the door for mentor-protege. It opens the door for teaming arrangements with these bigger companies. There's a lot of opportunity. Once we started taking advantage, and I wouldn't say taking advantage, we learned more about the program, and we used we worked the program.
Right.
We won several 8A projects. Now we're being primes. Now I'm looking for subs to help us.
So as a prime, you are the direct contractor. Sorry to repeat that.
No,
but
direct
just to make sure folks
because that's the
understand.
difference. The prime sub relationship. Now I'm the prime. I'm the contract holder
You're dealing directly with the government.
Directly to the government, and now I'm picking up the primes. Much like my relationship with General Dynamics, they were the prime, I was the sub.
And
Now,
with that comes a lot of responsibility. You have the project management, program management,
Yes.
financial responsibilities.
Right.
You got to pay everybody. You got to make sure you bill and get paid. Before, you just did your work for the prime and
Oh yeah, we were fat, dumb, and
submitted your
happy. We
invoice
just submitted an invoice and got
Right.
paid, and this is great. Now you're exactly right. Not only does that come along, now you have audits. You're audited. I was audited every year on different aspects of the company. Are we in adherence to these regulations?
So at this point, are you bringing on compliance people? Are you training project managers to do that? It sounds like you're getting to the point where you're adding some of those management layers.
We were adding management layers. We were winning projects. We were expanding. We expanded office into San Antonio and into Dallas, and those were huge, huge offices for us.
So a few minutes ago, we were talking. You had 5 techs.
5.
How many are you up to at this point?
At this point, I think we were up to 50.
So you're up to 50 employees or 50 techs?
Employees.
So 50 employees. You went from 7, 8 employees very quickly to 50 employees.
Now I have an admin staff. Now I have a project management staff. I have estimators. And then I have technicians, lead techs, installers, RCDDs, engineers on staff, and we're growing. Things are really looking well.
And from 5 techs to 50 employees, what's
let's
your
see.
timeline there?
That was 03 to 010. Or 010, I say 2010.
So 7 years from
Yeah.
just winning some projects as a sub to getting your 8A and 50 employees.
Mm-hmm. 09, I think, is when we first really started picking up steam. And that's when we opened up in Dallas, or I'm sorry, opened up in San Antonio. And then it was 09, 010, or 10 is when we expanded even more, picked up more employees, got bigger offices. Things just took off. And then they did. For 11, we added more people, had contracts across the country. We were not just limited to 1 or 2 states. We were in multiple states.
And military bases at this time were growing, especially some of the remote locations
Right.
like Cannon, Hill Air Force Base, places that maybe resembled the Middle East a little bit.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Kind of funny.
Kind of funny. It worked that way. Had bombing ranges where people could go out and practice.
Yep.
And copper wasn't cutting it anymore.
No,
more and more fiber.
We were doing a lot of fiber, a lot of large count copper. Then we also did a lot of inside plant.
Right.
So there was a lot of rehab going on, a lot of older government buildings. They were gutting and fixing them, if you will,
So
bringing it up to date. We're doing a lot of inside plant, a lot of outside plant.
Military bases are growing exponentially. Some of them are.
Federal agencies.
And
I wrote and won our first major contract with the GSA, and that was an $11 million contract. So now we're pushing some real numbers now. We're doing about $15 million annually.
Annual revenues.
And then in 11, we jumped. We jumped up. Well, for us, it was about $2 more million, but we picked up another almost 30 people. We were at our peak. We were 84 full-time people.
Okay.
Doing 17 and a half. And looking forward to the bump to 20. The 20 was coming. Now, just before that, so in 11, still at 8A, I had just started my application for service disabled veteran owned. Again, it was another one of those things for me where, like, look, again, don't look at me, look at the quality of my work. And then I realized, hey, I don't write the rules. Maybe I qualify. My time in the Navy as a gunner's mate, my hearing shot. I went and applied. The VA sent me to 3 different doctors in the VA and out of the VA, and they all 3 came back and said, "You are deaf. You certainly are."
Understood.
And this is not good. So
you have another qualification on your belt. So
Another
another
qualification.
avenue of getting directly to the customer, which is
Correct.
fantastic. Now, from my viewpoint on this side of the table, I work for a distributor or I work for companies that sold stuff to you.
right.
and you were the belle of the ball. You were growing exponentially, and
Exponentially.
everybody was chasing you.
Oh, they were going
to
crazy.
Get you to open that checkbook.
Because as the distributor for me that I was buying my material from, I was running $2 million a year through a company like you were working for.
Right.
And that's significant for an
Absolutely.
8A, for a service disabled veteran owned, for a small business period.
Correct.
And it wasn't just one distributor. There was multiple distributors getting that kind of.
So within 10 years, you've gone from a few 100,000 in revenue
Right.
to you
Millions.
broke the 10 million
Yeah.
ceiling, and you were bumping up against a $20 million ceiling.
Scratching it. Now, just before, like I said, in 11, as an 8A, I was awarded for the state of New Mexico, the best minority-owned small business owner for the state, which is a big deal. And the year following, I was awarded the state of New Mexico's veteran-owned company, #1 veteran-owned.
So
company.
you are riding high.
We are riding high.
What could go
11
wrong?
and 12. Everything is just, it couldn't be. I mean, holy cow. It was just going good. I had a friend of mine who was and still is, president of the bank here in town. We were visiting one day, and he says, "Justin, why don't you sell this thing?" And I'm like, "Are you kidding me? I'm having more fun than I've ever had in my life.
Right?
How can, what could go wrong on all this?"
Nothing could go wrong. You're printing money.
Yeah. Well, here comes the recession.
Uh-oh.
The recession killed us. We're all Fed Gov. I had projects coming that were to be awarded. We had numbers in. I had projects we were in the middle of. And then I had 2 large projects, one in Florida and one in California, San Francisco and Homestead, Florida. And they're large. So recession hits. All the projects in the middle dry up. The one out in Florida, it turns out the gentleman ended up not paying me $1.2 million. I wasn't the only contractor. He spent a lot of time. I think he still is in federal prison today. Had a little issue not paying things.
Yep.
So that went south quickly. We were purging money that I was thinking, well, this can't last long. This can't last forever. And then the project out in San Francisco was the same way. It was just turning out to be a loser, just a complete mess. Everything was just going wrong. I'm running at full staff. Those are my only 2 large projects, and they're both tanking. So the sequestration hits.
That
only
hits the election year.
Yeah.
That hits, and also just to update folks, sorry to interrupt a little bit, operations and projects, I worked in projects as well for a while, and what people don't understand is the government payment cycle is not quite as short as some.
Right.
And quite often you are rolling one project right into another, and the monies flow from payment from one to the next to the next. And,
it wasn't unheard for us to have 90-day, on the money.
Right.
After
you build them.
Sure, after I build them.
Yeah.
So 45 days, we thought if we could just get 45 days, that's awesome. We're doing good. And some we would.
Right.
We really would. But at 90 days, that's when we expect to see a check. And when the one out in Florida wasn't happening, that just killed us.
And they didn't promote it. If you forgot to cross a T or something, they would just let it sit.
They would.
And then you would come back in 91 days and say, okay, where's my money? And they'd say, well, resubmit and we'll pay you in 90 days.
Absolutely. And there's a big misunderstanding, maybe nomenclature, whatever you want to call it, concerning the small business, particularly the 8A program. You feel like you're protected. If you're not getting paid by your customer, you can just jump up, raise your hand, and the SBA will go take care of it. That's not the case. No, that's not the case at all. There was another project we did over in Cuba, Guantanamo Bay, and I was the sub, wasn't the prime. And again, he stiffed me for $300K. I raised all kinds of hell through the SBA. He was 8A, I'm 8A. Why aren't I getting paid? I'm a small business. He's a small business. And the SBA said, sucks to be you.
Yeah. Well, we'll say something, but that's about the extent of our power.
And that's really it. And that was it compared. So when I started raising my hand about these other 2 projects, it didn't matter. What matters is if you have good lawyers. And if you have good lawyers and you're paying out of your pocket, then you can make some things happen.
That's a great point. So you were bumping up against 20 million. Recession hits, sequestration, election year, everything you can think of. Some projects go south.
2 projects go south.
You have 84 people that are reliant upon
Sure.
you to feed their families. So you got a lot of pressure there to do what you feel, I'm sure, is the right thing.
Well, and I took it serious. I really did on
Right.
all of it. That was all big. That was my thing to do. We all had a role within the company, and I took my role very seriously as the guy in the back steering the ship.
Sure.
And that's my responsibility to make sure that my employees are taken care of and their families are taken care of, because I'm asking them to get out on the road and do a lot of things that normal people just don't do.
You're thinking, maybe I should have sold.
Yeah, should have sold. That's what I was thinking. And that's what started a lot of it. So I had to make some really, really hard decisions quite fast. And it was also during that time, everything was just going nuts. So my wife started having health problems. So we took her out of the company. I started to lay off some people. That was really, really hard.
Right.
To do that. I suffered a heart attack during that. We laid off some more, and I'm closing offices. The first office I closed was in Seattle, and then Denver.
You just glossed right over the heart attack thing, right?
Yeah, sure did.
Okay.
So, but because I couldn't, we got to stay on the road. I'm shutting things down, trying to make some more decisions, hard decisions, and it got harder and harder, and it was through the relationships that we had, the quality of work that all of us had done, that my reputation stayed as good as it did. It was still really good in the industry out there. Everybody was going through hard times. I wasn't the only one going through hard times.
I would agree with that. 100%.
Other contractors were having a hard time. The distribution was having a hard time. Even because when sequestration hit, that shut down a lot of the government guys on the government payroll didn't get paid. So they understood my situation for the first time.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And there's a lot of folks that just folded up the tent and disappeared.
They did.
And not just disappeared because they didn't want to do it anymore. They disappeared and took a lot of money and ran. And
they did. Some did that. Some got out like
and,
that. Yeah.
Didn't finish some projects that were out there hanging that were vital to the warfighter.
Sure.
There was a lot of, for good reasons and for bad reasons, a lot of unethical.
There was.
Things
there
done.
really was a lot. There was a lot of things moving and going and shaking. And I was hoping that maybe I could pick up some of that low-hanging fruit. But once those guys left that contract, the contract just closed down. There was no money.
Right.
So it was.
They would steal that money from that contract and move it over to something else that was more vital, or just refund it back into the budget.
So we hung on. We hung on as long as we could. Won another big another contract with the GSA. But that's IDIQ. So now we're talking another terminology. Indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity.
Right.
So it's an 11 million ceiling, but you have to go out and really market and shop and win those.
So up until this point, in retrospect, do you think there's anything you could have done to lessen the blow from when it came? Or it from the outside looking in, it looked like a perfect storm to me.
It was a perfect storm. Hindsight's always 20/20.
Sure.
It does. And I did the best, made the best decisions I could with the information in front of me at the time.
Yep.
So that was one of the key things. Now, looking back, sure, I could have made some better choices. Probably the one that sticks out the most is I should have trimmed employees sooner.
Okay.
But that's a hard call. It really is.
Yes, sir.
And I still saw the potential. I still saw the projects. They were still there, and here they are today. Now here we are 5-7 years later, and the projects are here. Now I'm out. So I've had at the end of the day, in May of this year, shut down Americom. It was kind of hard.
Shut down officially.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've had some folks look at assets and things like that, but you went from 5 employees to 84, $20 million in revenue, and 4 years later, in May 2018.
To end with 5. We had 5 there at the end.
Wow.
And And that's that's probably another day for another story on
Sure.
on that roller coaster at the end of Americom,
Right.
because there were some really big lessons learned then. I started looking for buyers, mergers,
Right.
anything really.
Sure. Lifeline.
Yeah, and there's and it doesn't matter. You during the course of business, you'll be burned. It just happens. You
Right.
There's sharks. They're all out there. As we kind of glossed over at the beginning, I got burned on some of those things at the very beginning. And it was just too dumb to realize what happened. And then you get a little older, a little more confident, smarter. You pick up on things, and you can
Right.
stay away from it. But there's another one. Another one comes around, and I get burned again.
Sure.
But you just have to keep going. You have to.
Well, you got to trust in people and do your best.
Absolutely. And persistence. I think that's the key to any longevity for any business, for any person, is persistence. Just keep in there, hang in, believe what you do, and keep going.
So is there any one lesson that you could say to somebody that you see growing exponentially that would be a great bit of advice to your younger self or
Sure.
to them?
As a CEO, as the owner of the company that's really, really taken off and things are doing well, I strongly encourage a solid CFO. Now, my wife was fantastic. I couldn't have done it without her. But she'll agree with me that there's things that we didn't know in the financial side that other than just making sure that the bills are paid and you collect your money. That's the simplistic side of the whole thing, and it's most important.
If I was running a business today, and it's exactly what I would think. I'm paying my bills and I'm collecting.
What we didn't know was there were so many avenues as a CFO if you're aware of them, because they're trained, they're MBAs, they're trained on how to work to use the money to your advantage, and I would say that would be key. And it's not that's probably the biggest thing, because I look back at what the company did to the health of my wife, and it's not worth it.
No,
it's not worth it at all.
Do you?
No, yeah, sure.
Heart attack? You've glossed over that twice.
Yeah,
you had a heart attack, my friend.
And once we hired our first CFO, Tracy was very excited to meet him, and she would agree that it was out of her league, it was out of my league. What these guys bring, these guys, gals, people bring to the table is huge. It's huge. It takes a burden off of well, for me as the CEO's point of the spear, tip of the spear. They really watch the operations. While I had operations managers, they're really watching the whole picture on the financial side. As you know, as you're writing a proposal and you win it, now we're actually executing it. Well, there may be a bag of bolts left out, maybe another roll of tape. Hey, just run down and get it. Just go get it.
Right.
Well, these things add up.
Yes, they do.
And then the other side is, we ordered 527 boxes of widgets when we needed 527 units, each, not box. So now we have all this leftover product. Well, we're just going to hang on to it, and we'll not order on the next one. So it's already paid for on this one. We screwed it up. So instead of sending it back, we held on to it and hoped that it would work out on the next one. And sure enough, it did.
You had a lot of widgets.
But right now, I'm sitting on a lot of widgets without a company and without a project for it.
Oh boy. Well, it's not all doom and gloom.
No.
Things
It's
are
not all
picking
doom.
up.
I wouldn't say it's all doom and gloom. It's all a learning lesson. It really is. It was a personal learning lesson for myself on what I could do, what I could handle. It really opened my eyes to a lot of things, and I think it made me a better, you could say, executive level officer for another company on pitfalls, what to look for, what to watch for, but also what to move into. As an entrepreneur, I am an optimist. I really am.
Sure.
And I'm not afraid to go out and tackle. Let's go get it. We can do this. We can go do this. And that's the key behind it. To be successful and to expand, you have to get up and go. You have to move constantly.
Oh, you can do anything if you just dig in and go for it, right?
Don't be afraid.
Right. Well, Justin, thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing your story.
Absolutely.
Pretty darn important. I think a lot of folks will be very, very happy to hear it.
Well, good. Well, anytime, Doyle. Thank you.
Thank you.